Hello and welcome back to Wisdom Chats. I am Susie Verde, your host. This is part 2 of the interview with my friend and amazing author, Kay Lindahl. Her book, The Sacred Art of Listening, is a beautiful guide to how it is that we can apply in simple steps ways in which we can improve our communication, and that's the theme of our talk today: improving the way we communicate through the art of deep listening. And believe me, it's much deeper than most people think that deep listening is. So if you haven't watched part 1, please do, because we actually covered a lot of very interesting concepts and ideas and examples of how Kay has been applying deep listening in her workshops and in her different programs. Kay has been doing this beautiful work for over 20 years. So anyways, we're just continuing from part 1. And I would like to start by asking Kay to talk about the difference between dialogue and discussion. Because just before you go on, Kay, I just wanted to ask this key question, because a lot of people think they're having a dialogue, but in fact they're actually having discussions, and they don't know what's the difference. And when you have beautiful dialogue, as Kay will share with us, you can create language and exchange that connects rather than separates. And that's so important for our relationship. So please, Kay, could you guide us on the differences and what constitutes creative dialogue?
Sure. This work comes from a man by the name of David Bohm, and he did some really good work on dialogue way back in the 80s, and his work is what informed me. And one of the things that just really stuck with me was his distinction between dialogue and discussion. And dialogue is from the Greek dia, through logos, meaning or word. So a dialogue is a conversation in which there's a flow of words and there's a flow of meaning through the words, and you're just exploring something, you're looking at all different aspects of something. It has a certain flow to it, that sometimes it goes in unexpected places. You don't have an end result in mind. You just are in this conversation where people are speaking and listening to each other. So that's the dialogue. Discussion comes from the Latin dis catere. Dis is a part, catere is to shake. And it's like an analysis. It's like looking for answers. It's like being very specific about things. So there's a completely different kind of conversation from a dialogue. So it's more looking for results. You want something to happen. There's action in a discussion, whereas in a dialogue, it's more in that flow of beingness. And so most of the time, we sort of dance back and forth between the two, but we don't really know that distinction. And so if I think we're in a dialogue, that we're just exploring, we're looking to see what comes up, we're kind of just in that state of expectation of that we each have something to contribute. We're going to just flow with this and see what shows up. And you think we're in a discussion where we're looking for answers. We have to get something done. We've got goals and objectives, and we're going to do that. We're in two completely different conversations, and that's why we sometimes, we go like this instead of we're not connecting, because we're in different conversations where we can say to somebody, I really like to clarify that that we're going to have a conversation now where we're just exploring, or we need to have a conversation where we're going to get something done. And then so one's the dialogue and one's the discussion. And once you do that, then I'm not frustrated because you're trying to you're coming up with all the answers, and I don't want answers. I just want to explore. And you're not frustrated because we're not coming up with answers. We're just wasting our time doing this other thing. Yeah. But if you know that we're in that kind of conversation or in the other kind of conversation, then it makes things easier for both of us, for the whole group, if you're in a group.
Absolutely. You know, I guess it's my role as an interviewer sometimes to use the skeptic's hat.
Yeah.
So I and I keep thinking like, well, okay, and for everybody that's out there listening to us and thinking, well, that's very nice, but you know what? I don't have time for that because I basically, you know, have a full schedule, and when I sit with my team or when I sit with my partner or with my kids, everything needs to be very directed. The communication needs to be very practical and directed. And so I was just like thinking here, if you could talk about the cons and pros of spending the extra little time to create quality interaction versus pushing for decisions, and what could be the all the problems created around pushing ourselves versus honoring ourselves or honoring that relationship by creating that time to nurture it, to develop it in the way that it deserves.
Yeah, I mean, this is a real dilemma, and I understand that. For the in the workplace particularly, I think in personal relationships we can have another conversation, but in the workplace
Right.
particularly, that there is this pressing need to get things done, and to have results and to just move forward all the time. And yet, I think Peter Senge has done some work in this, and I know that there are people since he wrote his book on the fifth dimension that have done work on this, that when we do take the time to have some of these more dialogue oriented conversations, maybe not every day, and maybe it's once a week, maybe it's more, maybe it's less, that it does impact the quality of the work that gets done, and it gets done better and faster, and you come up with ideas that you might not think of when you're push all the time. And I know that there are some companies now that have well, there's companies that have places where they have meditation rooms now that people can go and meditate. There are other companies that have a 1 day a week or 1 day a month or something where they take time out, and people can just not do the work, but just think, just take time to explore, to just be. And they can do it alone, they can do it with each other, but they've discovered that when we take that reflective kind of time, it moves us forward in a whole different direction.
I just happen to have a friend who is implementing now a special mindfulness app, that a corporate app that is supposed to guide employees to meditate together for 20 minutes in the workplace. And and it's so amazing the feedback that he's getting, because just the fact that from say those 20 minutes people are going to sit together and breathe together and follow the instructions of that app, which is all about centering themselves, getting themselves into their bodies, opening their hearts, and really opening a channel of communication, not only what's going inside, but also what's possible outside, from that centered space. The feedback has been extraordinary, so positive. So I love the idea that the concept of mindfulness is more and more popular, and people are more and more open to actually have access to that space of peace and quiet within the stress of the working environment.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I was going to say, even another environment that they're really using a lot of this work, mindfulness and quiet, silent times, is in schools with little children. And there have been numbers of studies done, and one of the studies is with a place in England. I believe there's a school in England that this is young kids up to grade 7 or 8. The kids don't get put into any kind of detention anymore. They go to a room where they meditate and they quiet. And what they discovered is that it dissipates a lot of the the behavior, the misbehavior that has been happening when these kids can learn how to be silent. And there's a place in Vermont where the whole city has taken on meditation. Schools, the fire department, the police department, they've taken on meditation or quiet or silent time or mindfulness, whatever you call it. And they find that the behavior changes.
So would you say that mindfulness could be the predecessor of deep listening?
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think it's because part of one of the main practices I think that helps us become better listeners is silence. Becoming comfortable with silence. When we're comfortable with silence, then we allow the space for people because we're comfortable with that silence. We're not saying, oh my gosh, it's silent, I better say something. It's like, oh, there's a quiet time here. Let's just breathe into this and see what comes out of it. It's a whole different way of being. And that's all kinds of things happen out of that. And silence is so important.
Yes. And I love when you described this sort of stress of, oh my God, what I'm going to say now, this discomfort. If it is that you are going through, a stressful, whatever type of stress, stress by not knowing what to say, stress because you are, maybe late for work, stress for, about maybe what's going on with your immediate relationships. You can only get access to that feeling of stress if it is that you are, I would say, willing to de-stress, because otherwise you don't realize that you actually are having that response. Am I being clear?
Yes, I understand.
Yeah, so it's very, in other words, we don't even know that we are immersed in stress until we allow ourselves to tap into that quieter zone, the zone of silence.
Yes, and one of the exercises I do in my workshops has to do with silence. I do several exercises, but one of them has to do with music, and it's a particular kind of music, and it's Taizé is the name of that style of music, and it's a form of chanting, but the words don't. They're words that are just repeated over and over again, and pretty soon you just are in that space of the music. And people afterwards often say, I say, what happened? What was it like? And they say, I didn't realize how tense I was, but I found myself really relaxing. Or even sometimes I'll do that I'll just take 1 minute of silence, and let's do a minute of silence and see what that's like. Yeah. And people, I say, so after we've done this minute of silence, and I say, so what was it like? And people say, oh, it was just, I felt so peaceful, and I felt my breathing, and I felt my body relax, and I didn't know how tense I was until I was silent. So it's that same idea and it's something that I recommend people do every single day, at least a minute of silence. Yeah. If you can't do more, do a minute, and it does impact.
Absolutely. Yeah. Okay, I would love to talk more now about the dialogue aspect. I think there's so many people out there wanting to learn how to have dialogues that are more open-hearted, and that it could allow to transformation and deeper connection. We are so, as a culture, so disconnected and so much, longing for connection. So it needs to not come here like what we imagine what connection should look like, right? But as a practice. Yeah. At one point in your book, you say the art of dialogue may make the difference between a world of war and a world of peace. So lovely. Yeah. So tell us about the world of peace. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because the reason I got into looking at dialogue in the first place was that I was involved in interfaith work. And I got involved in interfaith work right shortly after I became involved in that work. I went to the Parliament of the World's Religions in Chicago in 1993, and Hans Kung, who is a theologian, said at that conference, he said, there'll be no peace among nations until there's peace among religions. There'll be no peace among religions until there's dialogue among religions. And so from his perspective, that dialogue in this particular instance among religions was what would lead us into more peaceful world. So dialogue is a very important aspect of finding ways to live in harmony with each other on this beautiful planet that we have.
So, Kay, I would love to learn more about how it is that we can hold open-ended conversations from a space of this open-hearted intention. So, in other words, how it is that coming from I statements, one is able to actually create a space in which everything is possible, and the person that who is interacting with you in a dialogue is being invited to actually say their truth, and you ask. So, in other words, how it is that you can ask questions that will deepen that possibility.
Yeah, that's good, Susie. It's because so many times what we do is we close the conversation by saying, well, I don't think that's great, right? Or I don't think this is the way we should do things, instead of saying, well, that's an interesting, tell me more about it. Tell me more what you mean by that. Because I need to know. That's a new idea for me, and I want to explore that, rather than saying, oh, that's a stupid thing.
Yeah.
how could you think that way? Which is, sometimes we like to do those things. But this it's opening up to that, and rather than asking questions that can be responded with yes or no, just asking questions that open things up. Like, I want to know more about how you feel about that, or tell me about when you started to think that way, or what happened when you had that experience. Tell me more about that experience. What was it like for you? And that opens things up for people.
Yeah, it's actually, again, I'm so amazed how there are a lot of parallels between deep listening as in the context of creating peace and connection, and the art of coaching, the practice of coaching.
Sure.
I would say, though, that with coaching, there is always an objective to be achieved. So, the coach is listening so that, something may become possible, something may be revealed. So you're nesting that possibility. And I guess the difference with what you do with the possibility of creating communion between two people and peace in many times is it doesn't need to lead anywhere. It's just the experience of that exchange, right? Because it's happening both sides.
Yes, exactly. Both people are having that experience. So both people are opening up and connecting with each other.
Exactly. There's no agenda.
No agenda.
Right. There's no observer. You're fully in the process. All
Yeah.
you're doing is you're engaging with that person so that you can merge into that magical space of possibility together.
Yes. One of the other things that I think is really critical to dialogue too is to know that you can listen to someone to understand them, and you don't have to believe them or agree with them. Because oftentimes we think we have to agree with somebody in order to listen to them, and we don't want to do that because we have a different opinion. And so if we can just tell ourselves, well, I think I can listen to understand where that person's coming from. I don't have to believe it. I don't have to agree with it, but I want to understand this person. Coming from that curiosity, that kind of wonder, how did that person come to that? And just being authentically interested in their response. Not the kind of thing that if they respond, then they'll give me some more ammunition and I can just whap them with that later. That doesn't lead to peace. It's just that was a big one for me, to just to really take that in and really say, I can listen to understand, even though I don't agree with them or believe them.
Yeah, that's a very important piece, and it doesn't come naturally. It really does. Because what you need to do is you need to put aside your ego.
Exactly.
And it's almost like it's forceps sometimes, because depending on what's being said, if it goes against your worldview, then it's almost like, oh my God, no, I cannot take this. And yet having that wisdom to accept that people sometimes have very different worldviews than ours, right? And occupy that humble space.
Exactly. Yeah. One of the things the ways I talk about this is I say, know what your hot spots are. Know what the hot issue for you is, like as a person. When I know that X topic is a hot spot for me and Y topic is a hot spot, then when those come up in conversation with somebody that has a different viewpoint from mine, I can say, oh, there's my hot spot. Let me just let go of that for now. I can come back to it. But let go of it now, because otherwise I'll get carried off in the emotion and all that goes along with that, and I will no longer be listening to this other person at all, because I'll be listening to what's the conversation in my head about my hotspot issue. Whereas, so if I just say, okay, that's my hotspot, put it away, go back to listening, and when you're done, you can always take it back. Nobody's taking it away from you. And if you really are intentional about really connecting with somebody else, you don't connect very well when you get emotionally convinced that they are wrong and you are right.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, which I would like to bring that concept to personal relationship. And the point, at least for me, when I'm having a difficult conversation is, the question I ask myself is, what do I want, to be right, or to be able to create a connection with this person, and whatever level it might be a, work partner, it might be your, love partner, it might be whatever, your husband, your child, but that art of being clear that your intention is to create connection, and there is a difference between, I guess, it's not about saying yes. As you said, you don't need to agree, and it's a very interesting space, isn't it? I mean,
it really is.
Yeah. What do you mean you don't need to agree? But really, you don't. And in between, there is something that's possible. It's almost like the possibility of compromise, or to, okay, we'll meet here in the middle, and this could feel really good.
Yeah, and you don't have to give up who you are. In these conversations, you become more of who you are. I think when you can let go enough to just be present with somebody else and offer that space, and know that you don't have to let go of everything that makes you. It's just part of who you are is to be a space and a presence for other people in which they can talk and you can connect with people. It's the whole notion of connection is so important.
So important. Yes.
Yeah.
So, I was thinking, like, the idea of peace and creating, so many people these days are talking about the peace movements, and our role in changing the world, and be agents of change. But in my experience, in most of the times, people are not aware of what entails to actually create peace through dialogue, and all of, and sometimes dialogue can hurt so much, right? And when you're just throwing whatever it is that you find right. And so can we talk a little bit about the role of creating peace inside, and how does it look like for you?
Yes, and what the first words that came to my mind were that peace is not something that you do. Peace is something that you be. Again, you know, that's kind of a theme of my work. That it's about being. Doing comes after the being. The being is the first step, and then the doing comes after that.
Right.
And so I think there's the beingness to be peace, and one of the ways for me to be peaceful, and people, when I first started meditating, which is about 25 or 26 years ago, one of the things that I didn't notice so much, but people around me said, you radiate peace. I sense peace there. And it comes from the practice of practicing either any form of meditation, whatever it happens to be, silence of any form. It's almost as though our brains need that to reconnect themselves. I think of the story of farmers who used to leave part of their field, one field vacant every year. They didn't plant on it, so the soil could replenish itself. And then the next time they planted there, things would grow better. I think silence is like that for our brains, for our hearts and our souls, that we need silence. And some of the studies that are being done in neuroscience right now with rats prove that silence is a complete value. There are two that I want to mention. One is that they've discovered that after 2 hours of silence every day, that the brains cells in the hippocampus area of the rats' brains were growing new cells. New cells were generated through silence. And another study was done that said that found that silence, and half an hour of silence is no, it's how many? I think it was even less than a half an hour of silence. Like 10 minutes of silence is better than a half an hour of music to calm you down. There's value in silence. We need that, and I think that's one of the first steps that we need to get comfortable with in order to do the listening and to be able to be present with others. It's getting comfortable with silence, being in that place of stillness. Sometimes people like that word better than silence. That's fine. It's that place of stillness where we're just being. We're not doing.
Yeah, a very common word these days is to be mindful, to cultivate mindfulness.
Yes.
And like my friend Zach Burke, actually his app, I should say, it's so nice. It's called Hapco. It's like this revolution of becoming present in the moment, and how it is that is possible through breathing. And there's plenty of other apps out there that would help people to even start getting closer to the concept of what you're describing, of what we're talking about. And yet the reason why we're having this conversation, and the reason why there's so many initiatives for helping people to actually find that common peace is because the world is facing some very troubled times these days. And so, that's it. Instead of reacting, this is one of the ways in which we can create a completely different reality by tapping into our source.
Yes.
And,
It's I think it's a really important aspect of what we can do as to help have the world become a more peaceful place, is to be first within ourselves, and then within our close relationships, and then in our work and in our communities, to just take this moment of silence with us wherever we go.
Wow.
The work that I do now, almost every time I start a meeting anymore, we'll have a minute of silence, whether it's a Zoom call or whether it's on the phone, or whether it's any kind of, that we take time to be in silence and breathe together before we start meeting. And the second thing we do is we go and we check in with each other. How are you doing? How's it going? Anything happened since last time that you need to share with us before we start our meeting? And those simple things, and they make such a difference in how we be as we go forward in the work that we do in the world. And I think it's a very, the way success and work and leadership have been defined in our society has been very linear for a long time. And I think we're getting to a time when we're coming to a more organic understanding of all of this, and that maybe there's a time and a place for linear, and then there's a time and a place for organic, and that we need some practice in the organic part because we've been so trained in the linear part of our lives. If that makes any sense at all to you.
Absolutely. I think the organic is about the feminine aspect of leadership that is really emerging powerfully in the world these days. The linear is about the male. It's about the objective. It's about the doing mind. It's about not being very connected with feelings, and all of this universe as being regarded as so woo-woo until very recently. And you know, Kay, thanks to you and to other people that have been out there for the last 20 years promoting this kind of dialogue, this kind of conversation, and actually teaching people to be more mindful in the way that they are using their words, the way they are interacting, and also the way that they're looking for, the way that they should be looking for those quiet moments, so that permeates throughout their lives in whatever they do. And
well, and it's a cycle. It's like the silence. We need the silence to get ourselves grounded. Then when we're in the silence, we come out of the silence and go into action, and we get things done. And then we need to go back into the silence again, and then we come back out and go into the action again. It's much more. There's a wholeness to that rather than always do. You know, there's a wholeness to that kind of way of being in the world. And I think it's critical at this point in time that we start moving in that direction.
And what's possible from that space, do you think?
I think from that space that we have the opportunity to understand each other better, because we do have differences. We're not all alike. No matter where you go in any part of the world, you're going to find differences. And if we can just understand that we are different and have that sense of connection, even though we're different. I mean, I feel like so many wise people have said this, and that something that happens anywhere happens everywhere. Like whatever happens in any part of the world impacts me. And so we are connected. We are connected to everybody on this planet, is my belief, and that we are connected through our being. And so we work on our being part, then we will feel that connection. We won't be out killing each other, because there will be no other. They're all us. We're all together.
Okay, we're coming to the end of part 2 of our interview. Should we do a part 3?
Another day.
God, yes. Yeah. So, I just would like to invite you to leave a powerful message to our viewers. What do you think they really should know at this point, so that they can create more nurturing, satisfying, engaging relationships?
Oh, that's a good question. It's a big question, and I don't know that there's a response that.
But what's really important for that quality to be established?
I think what's really important is to recognize the value and the importance of listening. There's a couple of quotes. One is from a Quaker by the name of Douglas Steer, and he says, "To listen another soul into a condition of disclosure and discovery may be almost the greatest service one human being ever performs for another." So it's the impact of our listening can really make a difference in the world. The quality of the way we listen, how we listen. And then another quote that I love is, "Being listened to is so close to being loved that most people cannot tell the difference."
Oh, I love this.
That's a
Ah,
man. Yeah.
can you say that
And
again? This is a tweet moment.
that's by a man by the name of David Augsburger, wrote that in a book that he wrote. And
Can you say it again?
David, being listened to is so close to being loved that most people cannot tell the difference.
Oh, it warms my heart. Oh,
Yeah,
that's beautiful.
mine too. I love that quote.
Oh my God. Okay. Oh, I love you.
Yeah. Oh,
Beautiful.
Susie.
Oh.
That's right. Comes right back at you. It's so
So,
wonderful to be connected with you again.
absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. Oh, what a joy.
Yeah.
So this is Kay's old version, the old version of her book. It's because I've been her fan for so long. Since then, now she changed the layout.
Here, I can show it.
Now it has
It'll
like
be
a
visible.
red cover, exactly.
Oop.
It's the sacred art of listening.
Yeah.
And it's one of those amazing books that you can go through and look at those great mandalas and meditate. As you can see, mine is all marked up. So it's you can use with your clients, with your family, with your partner. It has some amazing, beautiful practices, meditation. So yeah, it's a joy.
Thank you.
Beautiful.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. Well, our special guest, Kay, I'm just going to go very quickly again for the ones who missed the introduction in the beginning. Not only she has written The Sacred Art of Listening, but also Practicing the Sacred Art of Listening, A Guide to Enrich Your Relationships and Kindle Your Spiritual Life. It's another title. How Does God Listen? A children's book. And she's also the co-editor of Women, Spirituality, and Transformative Leadership, Where Grace Meets Power. Oh my God. This has been an honor, Kay. Please, I hope that we can continue conversation many times in the future.
That's great. Thank you. This has been wonderful. I love the way you're doing this.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Well, this is Wisdom Chats, a place for those wonderful people to come and share their wisdom. Am I blessed or what? I'm Susie Verde. Please stay tuned in our next episodes. Kay, again, thank you very much.
You're so welcome. It's been a real pleasure, truly.
Wow.
An honor. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all. Have a good night. Thanks.